Hello, my name is Larry Casso. I'd like to welcome you once again to my studio. What you see on the screen is a photograph taken on a sketching trip to the French Quarter in New Orleans during the latter part of October of 1993. What we see here is a very familiar scene of Pirates Alley that has been done a number of times, innumerable number of times really, by local artists, because it's such a scenic area. I mean, it's typical and represents so much of the antiquity of New Orleans that we all love and appreciate in the French Quarter. I decided in this painting I'd like to do something a little bit different than what we see in the picture in two ways. But before I get into that, let me stress that one of the things about the composition that I feel is so unique is the fact that it is a very typical New Orleans scene. It was taken on a sunny day, but as with so many scenes that we see in a place like the French Quarter, much of the information is there, maybe too much. And so consequently, it's necessary to simplify the information and perhaps take out certain things, add certain things, change the mood of the composition from a sunny day, perhaps, as you're going to see in a moment, to a somewhat dismal rainy day. And yet there will be a mood, and it will be cheerful, and there will be certain colors in it that I think will be very effective. Now, first of all, in thinking of the composition, this is not going to be easy for you to understand from this view because it's a little bit small to see on the camera. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the eye up here, and I'm going to use reference material that I've had for years, and I'm actually going to crop this in a way that this is the composition we're going to see, maybe a little bit higher. Now, I'm moving the eye approximately half to two-thirds of the distance closer. And what I'm trying to really illustrate to you is this is what an artist has the opportunity to do, and others can't. So with that in mind, I've sketched it out, and I'm going to describe the painting and paint it for you in a moment. But it will be a rainy scene, and the colors will be a little bit more unique than what you perhaps see in here. And hopefully it's going to be very loose and creative, and something that goes beyond maybe even the realistic realm, and creates a scene that will be very interesting to you. Okay, with that in mind, let's move our information. We'll go to the watercolor now. I've sketched it out very lightly. I might mention to you that I've used the watercolor paper one more time. We'll move it all the way up to the top to illustrate a little bit better what we're going to be doing. Now, I wet this Wattman paper some time ago. Now, of course, any of you that know anything about my program are aware of the fact that I'm very bullish on Arches watercolor paper. However, the Wattman has certain factors that I think are maybe desirable for certain things to a degree. And one of the things is the fact that it's a 300-pound, excuse me, it's a 200-pound paper instead of the normal 300-pound, which doesn't really have a lot to do with it, with what I'm going to say. But what I feel is unique is that it has no sizing in it. Now, the Arches watercolor paper, as you know, is handmade, mold-made. They pour it in a vat, they take it out, they compress it, take it out, dip it in gelatin, hang it on a clothesline with clothespins, and allow it to dry. What's nice about this, it's a little bit off-white. They both use 100% cotton, neutral pH factor, no acidity. But what's unique about it is the fact that the Arches enables you to put misket on it, enables you to cut masking tape on it, and really enables you to do a lot of things that you can't do on the Wattman. The Wattman, in return, gives you a paper that is pure white. It's limited in terms of how much you can erase on it, the different things that you can do to it, but one of the unique things about it is the fact that it is a paper that, because it does not have any gelatin in it, it's a paper that will stay wet longer. It dries rather flatly and really makes a nice surface to work on. Both have their purpose and their usefulness, but I've chosen it again just perhaps out of something a little bit different, and but mainly because there's no masking, there's no misket, and it stays wet a little bit longer because of not having the sizing in it. So I think we can pretty well see the general outline on the screen. I'm going to get a little bit more specific in a moment, but before I do that, I'd like to go ahead and wet it just a little bit more, then we'll begin to do the watercolor. Now I've wet the paper down to some degree. I like to come back now and perhaps wet it just a little bit more. And this will really give us a nice even surface to work on that will stay wet for some time. Now in a moment I'm going to show you the palette. I don't know how much of this you'll be able to see. Very nice paper to work with. Notice, well, you can't really probably notice this on the screen, but there's no buckling. Stays relatively flat. And it's a very even paper. It's not a bad paper. It just lacks some of the qualities that we find in the arches. But it's a smooth textured paper. Very smooth on one side, somewhat like a linen effect on the other side. Now, since I'm ready to get serious and start painting, I'm not going to dry it off under the paper, but around the edges and whatever I'll dry off, and mainly because it just keeps the paper nice and wet. Okay, now to start off with, I have a burnt umber. Now I use professional grade watercolors. I will either be using burnt umber or, I'll either be using Winsor Newton or Holbein. Unfortunately, we have no more Grumbacher, we have no more Liquitex professional grades. These are professional grade watercolors that will last a long time, and they're permanent. They have a much better flow to them. And if you were wanting to use something less than this to avoid the possibility of the fact that you're going to ruin something and you don't want to spend a lot of money, hey, you're going to ruin it. So use good equipment. Burnt umber, burnt umber, mauve. A little bit of a unique color. Rose madder or alizarin crimson if that's what you use, and Naples yellow. Use a professional grade. Now this is going to be a little bit of a surprise to you perhaps as to how I'm going to approach this, but I'm going to take my Naples and I'm going to cover the entire paper. Now you're probably already seeing on the screen that the Naples will have a pretty potent yellow looking effect to it. Of course I'll spread this out. Now what you need to be aware of, and I am, is the fact that it is a particular color that it's very opaque, meaning it's chalky, it has a lot of white in it. But it goes on strongly, and it's covering very nicely. However, it dries much, much lighter than what you will observe on the paper. And notice I'm using a rather large 1-inch brush. It's called the Grumbacher 4675F. And it's a number 16. Now the reason I like this brush for putting on washes, it's an acrylic brush really. It's not a watercolor brush. But what it does is when your paper's wet and you move it around, it allows you the ability to really move the pigment around, keep your paper wet, and even though it might streak a little bit, by the time you equalize the paper and the water and the pigment, it will all come together and eventually dry very lightly. Now I'll drop down to a 1/2 inch brush and begin to take a little bit of my rose madder, or if you're using alizarin crimson, that's fine. And I'm going to mix it. So maybe I can put this over here where you can watch it a little bit more closely. I'll mix it with the Naples yellow. Now it's going to look a little bit odd in here in the sense that it's extremely red at this point. And I think you can begin to see it filling the screen. Now what you need to remember, and this is something I know and you don't know, is that this red is a very, very transparent color like the Naples yellow. When it dries, I promise you, as strong as it looks right now, you'll barely see it. Now I'm going out on a limb to use this mauve color. I don't really know why I'm even using it. I'm mixing a little bit of burnt umber with it to tone it down. But I feel that it's a unique color. Now I want to come right across the top of my buildings with my pigment relatively strong. And just fill it in with the mauve. Now maybe we could just pull the paper down just a tiny bit where you can observe this a little bit more clearly. Now there's my mauve, a little bit of burnt umber. I may live to regret this, but what's life without a few risks? Now I may even go, now that I know the color that I want and I've mixed it fairly clearly, I may even go to a 3/4 inch brush to cover a little bit more territory. Now I decided on this mauve at the last moment. Don't ask me why. Mixes very nicely with the umber. Let's just see the effect we wound up with. Okay. Mix a little bit better than that. Now, I know something here that you don't know, and that is that I am going to come in a moment and I'm going to make the roof area a lot darker than what you see right here. So the fact that I come across with pigment that may look a little strong doesn't bother me. Now, as we come up into here, I want to break this up a little bit, the reddish part of it. I don't want it that strong. That's the crimson, rose madder, crimson, whatever. I'm going to just say rose madder from here out, because that's what we've been using, and you'll just have to always remember that it is the alizarin crimson. Now we'll come up here, bring this out a little and down, and some of you are already thinking, I just can't believe you're doing this, that's just not your colors. Well, that's the whole idea. Who wants to use the same colors over and over and over again? At some point in time, we want to take a few risks, use something new and fresh, loosen up. Okay, as you can see, I'm just coming in different areas now. Of course, a lot of this doesn't show up too well on the TV. Now let's come in over here. I'm really getting a little strong with that mauve, but you know, why not? I know it's a color that dries very lightly, and I really feel like I want something a little stronger at the top. So we'll just come in with it just a tiny bit stronger. No, a lot stronger. Now you can see as this red is drying, you barely see it now. Again, we're still sticking with the mauve and the umber. Just filling in something that will work and be a little bit more interesting. Coming in with a little bit of it over here. Now my alizarin crimson rose madder color is drying so badly, I've just decided I'd reinstate a little bit of it in here. Blend some of this out a little bit. Now, these colors normally dry quite a bit lighter. Let's hope that's the case here. I don't want to make it too dark at this particular point in time. Okay, now we'll come down to the base area here. And I'm going to take a little bit of umber. Let's just see what this does. Mix with the mauve. Now what I wanted to show perhaps is a little bit of a reflection of the building. So I'm going to come right across, right to the base. And then we'll bring this over slightly here. I know we're going to have one somewhat lighter area here, so we'll just make allowances for that. Oh, wait a minute. Excuse me. We're coming across right at the line of the street. I came across here, brought my shadow reflection down about to here. I'm going to leave a little light area in this section, and we're going to take our pigment, start at the base of the building, and pretty much bring it down as you see it. And we'll come over here, pick up this right here, and then likewise bring this down the same way. Now, this is a very good start on our wet on wet portion. Now, there's not a whole lot more we can do to it. Now, I notice that I do have an area up here that I feel is staying maybe a little bit too more red since I added the red to it. So let's put a little bit more of this in here, and we'll just blend it out. Okay, it's going to kind of be interesting to see if this dries very lightly and what it really does look like when it dries. Okay, with that in mind, I think we'll go ahead. Now, I started to say we'll stop, but I think we could perhaps put in some of the foliage I want to put in while it's still wet. Now, this is the whole secret to this, and it's the fun of it. We'll take a little bit of Hooker's green now. Now remember, our palette up to this point, okay, we have the burnt umber, the mauve, rose madder, and Naples yellow. Now I'm going to take a little bit of the Hooker's green light and add to it. That's our fifth color now. I already have our burnt umber. So perhaps the last color we'll add will be the French ultramarine blue or the ultramarine blue. Now, as this begins to dry, of course it's wet, it's going to start running. Now remember, these particular colors are going to dry lightly. Now there are a couple of areas up here that are crucial to what I'm doing, and I want to keep them relatively light. So I'm going to come right along that edge right there and pull them out. Now some of the other areas I'm not too concerned about, okay, because they're going to be covered. Now let's come up here. This has got a nice consistency of wetness. I don't really know what's going to happen when I do this, but I'm going to take a little bit of my burnt umber and my focus green. Just get the right mixture to get some of that little bit too strong color out of that. So we'll proceed with our wetness here that I think really continues to create the illusion of the... Now I'm going to have a fairly large tree here, so I'll just bring it. It's giving us the illusion of a rainy, wet day. Now, this is very loose for me, so if I seem a little timid, awkward, not knowing what I'm doing, it's only because all of the above are really true. Now, let's bring this down to a point. Now I'm going to come completely behind here, but not out to the end of this, because I know that that is going to be a black fence and I can cover it up. But along the base I want to stop about right here, and I don't want to go too much lower because there's a white edge I want to keep there. Now as we get to the base of this, perhaps we have some crepe myrtles, perhaps we have some whatever. But we certainly have some red flowers doing something down here that I want to keep. Got some of them up here. I like it so much we're going to put some of them in here. Okay, now we have this running pretty well. Let's go a little bit more to the umber and the green now. Focus green and the burnt umber. And I'm going to go right about the point of this line that I'm going to draw in for the bottom of the post area. Now what's going to happen, some of this is green is going to run below it. That's fine, because I intend to come back and do certain things to that. Now, as this is continuing to dry, I like to take a little bit of the ultramarine blue and burnt umber. In some of these sections here, I would like to create a little bit of a darker effect. So each time I dry, I'm going to be able to be a little, it dries I should say, a little bit further. I'll be able to make a little bit more specific statement, which is what I'm trying to do now. A lot of this I purposely wanted to allow it to run together. Now I'll just continue it right along. Everything's drying very nicely. I'll get the umber and the green again. Just begin bringing it up the side. Just creating the illusions that I would like to create with it. Now we want to show some of the red in here. Pick up some of the red overlapping here. Alright, and that's going to pretty well take care of that area. We'll put a few more darks in here. Now when this dries, I have a feeling I'm going to want to see if this is drying a little bit more, where I can put a little more foliagey looking effect in it, as I would like to do. Not have it so wispy looking at the end of it. That's working fine now. Right amount of pigment, right amount of water, and the time, and of course what creates this. Now I have this as a very de-emphasized area, as you can see, to kind of block in the right side of our painting. Okay, Now that's going to pretty well be the area that will be wet on wet, and I'm going to stop for a moment and just blow dry it. Let's see what we're coming up with here. Maybe I can move this down just a tiny bit. Let you see the whole picture. Okay, so what we're going to come up with. Now, before I blow dry this, I might mention again, this is something that all of you who have done wet on wet know. In order to keep the water from continuing to expand and somewhat of a capillary action coming around the end of the paper and finding its level as the pigment dries and the paper dries. Notice how I'm not lifting the paper as it's a natural tendency to do. I'm just coming around here and drying it like that. Now we'll apply the blow dryer. Now we've reached a point in our painting where I have to make some decisions. There will have to be areas up here that will have to be darker to make certain things stand out. There will be areas in here, as you can see, that are predominantly middle tone, and they're going to be darks, and they're going to be darks and middle tones over here. Now, I've made my decision. I think I'm going to have my strongest darks in this area here. So with that in mind, I'm going to tone this entire right side of my painting down, and I'm going to complete it. And then I'm going to go to the left side of the painting. I'm going to put certain basic colors that I would like to be predominant over here. I'll go ahead and finish my detail here. It's going to create an illusion of my light space in here, and that is what I will do last, and do only what I have to do. Now, one of the unique things about our climate here in Louisiana is the fact that we go into a fall and a winter period when you can still have a lot of greenery on your foliage and still see reds, as you see here, and browns and whatever. So what I'd like to do, I have a very strong tree that comes up this right side. I'd like to put the tree in, come back, put some fall-looking foliage, mix it in with the greens and reds that we see down here. You don't get the dramatic effect naturally that you get in so many other areas of the country, but it will be very effective. Okay, take a little bit of, I've already got all my colors out so far that I need. I've got the ultramarine blue and the burnt umber. For the heck of it, I might add a little burnt sienna. I don't remember whether I mentioned that or not. Just add a little burnt sienna to it. Now the main thing when you're doing something like this at this point, I happen to know I want it to be extremely strong as far as the color goes, and I really want to make a statement with what I'm doing. So I'm not going to hesitate to come in and really do some profound things on this tree. So let's just, at this point, come in, put a little more burnt sienna now. I've got the ultramarine blue, burnt umber, a little burnt sienna. Okay, now we're going to just come in, not be timid about it. Might even add a little water, however, so we don't have everything so completely dark. Now I like to purposely, I don't know whether it's showing up on the screen or not, but I will enjoy putting some dry brush effects in. I like the color to be lighter. And I'm going to put a little burnt sienna plain at this point, just so that I have some lighter areas that will begin to show up. Okay, that's one major branch area, and coming off the top of it, I'm just going to run this right out of our painting here, maybe put a couple of little small things. Now, just for the heck of it, have another limb coming out here and off the paper. Now notice when I did this one, you probably can't see too well. Let's see if I can maybe bring this down. And since I'm working up in this area predominantly right now. Maybe I can bring our camera in a little bit sharper focus while I do the top of this tree right here. Okay, now I've already got it sketched in, by the way. I pretty well know what I want. Now notice here I came in with my limb a little thick and then actually got thinner as I came down here. A tree just doesn't do that. Like your arm, it's thinner towards the end, then it gradually comes in and gets thicker and thicker, and here we have it coming down like this. Okay, now, of course, there's always a few little extra limbs coming off, smaller ones, whatever, filler things that we can put on here, like this. Okay, that takes care of one of our major branches. Now let's just move over. And actually, more than branches, this is more like it's part of the actual tree itself. Going a little heavier with the burnt sienna, because I want to warm it up for one reason, and secondly, I also know that this is going to dry a little bit lighter because of it. So I'll just continue to bring it on down like this. Connect it. Now I will have a limb coming off like this. A little bit more of the burnt sienna and burnt umber actually, rather than even the ultramarine blue. I'll show you why in just a moment. Okay, now this is where you really have to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And you really can't have any timidity about this. You've got to just really come in and stroke that brush and do the things you want to do with it. Okay, now I'll just, in addition to what I've done down here now, add a little bit more water to my palette. I'll come in and I'll drag this limb across. Notice I'm making sure that I keep it thicker towards the base of the tree, thinner as I come out. Now, as this particular area continues to dry before I go any further, I know I want this to be a very strongly accented area. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of my ultramarine blue and burnt umber now, and I'm going to come down the side of this tree, and I'm actually going to create certain areas. You probably can't see this too well on the screen, but you will see it in the finished painting. These will be certain areas that I purposely will make stronger. And create some effects that I think maybe give it a little bit more pattern as a tree. Come up here and do the same here. Break it up a little bit more. Okay, and again, what I'm hoping to accomplish here is just to create something that will give us a little bit more pattern later on. Okay. Now, we'll move on to our next area. Now, I think what I'll do, I do have some limbs coming out and over to the over the front of the building. I think I'm going to save those until the last part, perhaps after we do the building itself. Okay, so with that in mind, maybe we can come down and just complete the last portion of the tree completely, except for that one limb that I know I've already mentioned I'd like to bring out. All right, a little bit later on. Let's take our colors now. Now I do have one major limb I'm going to come in with down here. Bring it in. And of course, all along here, I can always come out with secondary limbs, anything I feel like I need at whatever point in time. Now see what I do when I have a limb like this that's starting to fade, because I did it lightly, I'll come back in and accent certain areas just to give it a little bit more interest. All right, let's move this up now to the trunk of our tree. Now the actual tree itself is going to be thicker than what you're seeing. I'm going to save part of it until a little bit later. But now I know this particular part of the tree here, I want to be very strong and predominant. So I'll come out with it like this. Let's put a little ultramarine blue in at this point to make it a lot stronger. Now, I will have some limbs coming off here. So what we'll do is we'll just come in with our tree now and actually bring it down, and let's just create certain effects that really make our grass stand out and create a lot more interest down here. Alright, I think this is going to pretty well fill it in sufficiently. Now, of course, at this point, there are several things you might want to do to create a little bit more interest. Let's say this is the limb that comes down. It's a little bit too wet to do this, but we can scrape it. We can do a lot of different things like this to create textures and patterns. But let's don't overdo it. I think we've captured the effect we want. We only have a little bit left over here. Now later, I'm going to save this till last. I'll probably have a lot of smaller limbs that I want to put in this top area up here. And I'm going to save that, however, till a little bit later for the last part of it. Okay, now with this completed, I'd like to stop now and go ahead and blow dry what I have done already. Now, since everything has dried, or I have dried everything on the painting, I'm going to move everything down to the bottom area of the painting. What we have here is a little bit of a cement mortar type area here that is the base for our wrought iron fence, and which I'm going to put in just a moment. Now, before I do that, however, I would like to mention that I had stopped the coloring here while it was wet, somewhat above the top of this, which I want to leave completely white. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the hooker's green, the burnt umber, and I'm going to come back here now and I'm going to accent some of these areas very strongly now that it's dried. So let's take our two favorite colors. When we're doing this type of thing, the burnt umber and the green. Okay, let's make sure we can pick this up. Now, if I have something like this to do, I'll turn it sideways. I want a very thick, crisp line. I'll move it right along here like this. Now, coming up into this area, now remember I had done all of this wet on wet and it's now dry. So I'm going to take this about as far as I want to take it, and I'm going to drop to a 1/2 inch brush now. I'm back into my foliage area. Take a little plain water and I'm going to wet it. Just work it into here. Now while I'm doing that, I know there's areas back in here I'd like to break up a little bit more. Now when I do this part of it, I'm not going to really worry about whether or not it's going to be exactly, you know, smooth or whatever. I'd like to begin picking up a little bit of texture. Now, take a little bit of my red now and perhaps break up some of this area a little bit more here. Strengthen it, go over some sections. Just overall create a little bit stronger effect. Now, I'll come to the top up here. I'm going to take a little bit of my mauve, mix with my rose madder, and I have a building up here that's got a somewhat of an awkward red color to it, kind of a burgundy color. So I'm just going to come down, I'm going to fill this. Now notice I'm actually picking up some of the reds and all I've left in there. I'll have to be honest with you, that was not completely intentional. So I'll just come down like this, like this, like this. That fills in that area. Now I'll allow that to dry before I put in the top part of it. However, as it's drying, it's a little more important than I want it to be, so I will come in with the ultramarine blue and burnt umber and just mute it somewhat and drag it down. Okay, I'll let that dry completely now. I want to just totally lose that area in there, and of course it will dry a lot lighter and accomplish what I'd like it to accomplish. Now, if I wanted to come back in and do a little bit more on this tree, I can come in and wet this area up to a degree. Now I'm trying to keep a misty look, so I don't want to do too much, but I can come in and soften some of the darker areas, some of the plainer areas now, by just wetting the paper first, a little bit too green, and doing some of the things we're doing right here. If it's a little too green, it's a little too green, so what? Now I think I'm going to keep these softer edges as we go out from the actual object, because I feel that it really accomplishes what we want a little bit better. Now, dry it where we need to dry it. Bring some of these sections up here as necessary. Fill it in. Remember, it's a de-emphasized area. We don't really want to spend a lot of time on it. I think we've spent enough already. Now, some of the areas I lost my tree slightly, so I might come back in and do this, just to pick it up again. Okay, now I think that's going to be sufficient for this particular area. I'd like to come in now and put my wrought iron fence in and really get my strong darks there. Now we're going to continue along the base of our painting. Now I'd like you to notice, as we stop at this wall with a pretty direct dark area, I want to come back now, and there's a raised base here, leaving this top portion of cement or whatever light that I want to pick up. Now, in order to keep this line very sharply, I want to remind you again of what I do. I'm going to turn my paper like this, and what I want is a little bit of the alizarin, rose madder. I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber, mostly the blue and the madder. And notice how I'm going to start like this. I'm really giving it somewhat of a darker mauvish look. And we'll bring that right down to that area there. Let's see if we can make that line taper just a little bit more without getting too picky and losing it as I almost did just now. Okay, now that'll be the line representing the top part of our fence. We'll bring this down like this, and we'll come back the other way, and this will be the base of our fence. Now let's, since we're close to the area here that is going to be somewhat wet and misty, we'll add a little water to it, let it begin reflecting some of the base area there where it's not maybe going to be quite as necessary to have it that strong. Okay, I think this is going to be sufficient for this. Now let me determine where my lines are for my fence, and I'd like to go ahead and indicate that, and perhaps a few other things, like when you have this much foliage like we have up here, you might want to come in and lightly show a few branches. I can do that also later, just something to break it up. Okay, now I would like to go ahead and put my fence in, whatever else I'm going to do in this area, and I will conclude it. Now one thing I have to stress to you, always have a pretty good idea of what you're doing and where you're going. I had lost this top line. I know it's not probably showing up on the screen, but I brought it back in again, and that's doing what I wanted to do there. Now let's come in. I'm really going to get pretty heavy duty with the ultramarine blue and burnt umber. I'm using a number 8 brush. You probably wonder, well, you're getting to put in that detail fence. Why are you using such a large brush? Well, the one thing we don't want to do in a painting like this is get too bogged down with detail. Okay. Now I happen to know that all of these fences in the quarter like this, when they come to the end of it, they have a pretty heavy base. So we're going to pull that down like this and pretty well fill in this area and lose it. Now while I'm putting that base in, I know there's also some type of a structure up here like this to offset it a little bit, and then maybe whatever coming up here. Okay, now what we're going to come to next Going to be a line which I'll have as a kind of a lost and found line. It's a double line like this. Create a little perspective. Notice I'm purposely trying to draw this with my brush. Now I'm going to come down along the base, and I'm going to do this right above this line. Now it's not going to show up a whole lot on your television. Hopefully it will on the photograph. Okay, now as I come to this area, my perspective is becoming so severe, I'm going to do something about it. Now, I know this particular area here, I want very little of the light to come through. I want this to be almost like it's in total darkness. Because in reality, this fence would be so close at this time. But notice that you would not see too much of the detail. But notice how I really am leaving a little bit of the light just to break through and break up the monotony. Now remind you, again, I'm not attempting to do a great deal of detail. I want to put the information in that we need, and then we're going to go from there. Now I think at the top of our fence we might have some little things up here like this, so we'll put something in. So what? Okay. Come on down to our line here. And we're going to reach a point where we'll begin to break it up a little bit, show a little bit more definition in it. Now here we're going to get to areas where I'm just going to lose it, which is fine. And that's what I feel, if we can ever get to that point as artists where we know when to make something an illusion that we observe and have to use our imagination to figure out, versus doing it so perfectly that it looks like it was a camera. Okay, now our fence area is really beginning to do what it's supposed to do now, and breaking up this area, giving us the illusion of the fence. And yet I really am not interested in trying to draw a whole lot of attention to this particular area. So we'll just continue on like we're doing, letting our fence area. Now this is where experience helps you a lot to do it this quickly, but you can certainly do it just same as way as I'm doing it, probably a little bit better. Just take a little bit more time. Now we'll just continue this right on out to the edge. Okay, now at the base of this, I think it's important to recognize that there were areas holding this up, so we'll just move back perspective wise a little bit each time. And then at the top of our fence, there's little things that perhaps symbolize something that we'll put up here like this. Now again, that's going to conclude what we're trying to do here. So the last thing I might do now is just come in with a little bit of my mauve color, and I might want to just tone this edge down a little. So I'll just come in like this. And show just a tiny bit of it like that. Okay. And maybe even soften this a little bit more. Okay, that's pretty well going to conclude that area. Except that I want to move it back up here. And at the top of this building, I'd like to put in a little bit of ultramarine blue and burnt umber. Mostly blue. And we have a roof on this building that I would like to pick up and pick it up perhaps rather darkly. And I notice I'm leaving certain light areas on my trees to stand out. Of course, I'll come in, leave a little light section and a shadow, and let your imagination take over. drop this down a tiny bit now. Enough. Okay, again, it doesn't say a lot. I don't want it to say a lot. The only thing as I move along, I see areas where I lost my tree a little, and I'd really like to come in with my strong ultramarine blue and burnt umber now. And do a little bit more on that. Okay. I think that's going to fairly well complete this portion of our painting. Now we're going to maybe move out. Let's lift our camera up here. Begin to see what we have. Overall, I think we have the makings of a fairly interesting composition. Now notice again, my plan was to take this entire right side and create an interest area perhaps and some things happening that would tie the entire part of the composition together. Okay, now we will move over to the left side of our painting, and I have a couple of buildings here that we want to concentrate on, and they're going to be in this area right here. So let's just focus our camera down a little bit closer. Now, I used a lot of that alizarin, rose madder, alizarin crimson type color up here. I want to come back to this particular first building now, and we'll paint only it. And I'm going to begin again with the crimson and a little rose madder, a crimson and a little Naples yellow to give it some body. Pardon me, it is the rose madder, and I'm going to try to remember to use just that term. But let's put a little Naples with it because I like the creamy effect it gives it. Okay, now let's do our first building here. We'll just bring this straight on down. Now this is the Naples again, the rose madder. And we want to be sure, if we come to the top of this, don't go over that line. Let's leave our light area there. I'm going to see that a little bit closer, so we can handle that, hopefully before it starts drying. Okay, we'll do that and bring this over just a little bit closer. Okay. And I think I'll do this and just move the picture up and down for your benefit. Okay. Again, it always looks a little stronger when you initially do it, but I would like for this to be even less, a lot lighter, I should say. Okay. Now I'm going to take again the rose madder and the Naples, and I want to do our second area down here. Okay, there's our first and our second layer. Now, just for the heck of it, I'd like to take some pure ultramarine blue and just maybe alter this color a little bit. I really don't know why, nor do I know what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. Other than I'd like to just make some of these areas look a little bit different. Okay, we've got that section, and we'll leave that in the bluer realm. Come in with our red up here at the top again, and let's one more time use our red effectively. white section there for our now again I like the blue, so let's put a little bit of that with it very strongly. And again, I'm just adding colors now to basically rearrange what we're doing and maybe even give it a little bit more interest. Now as I'll move back into these different sections, let's go to the bottom again, and I'm just going to basically gray this down now. Still a little bit wet. Starting moving our colors over and really picking up a little bit of everything. I've got a little burnt umber on this other side that's pretty strong in that tree in different areas. We'll maybe make this a little bit brown. Now what I basically did was I painted an area in to look like it's a portion of the building. Let it dry to a certain point and then came back in and painted in with next to it what I thought we needed to put in to kind of break it up a little bit. So here we have a little bit of umber mixed with a little bit of ultramarine blue, mostly umber. We'll just come down like this. Okay, likewise we'll come up to that second level. I want to come with the ultramarine blue and the burnt umber, but this time I think I want to go with the blue a little stronger. Now this isn't going to run too much. And there will be more I'm going to do on this area here momentarily, but for our purposes right now I don't want to overdo it or lose anything. So I'm trying to remember our structure. And we'll bring that down like this and maybe even come up at the top now. Just take a little bit of our blue mixture, come down like this. I'm really using some general dirty palette color now, so we'll just continue with it. And again, we'll fill in this area. Now let's see if I can lift this up a little. Some of that you probably even missed there. We'll pick it all up. Oh, we missed a lot of it. Pardon me for trying to give you a little bit more detailed information, but I think we're beginning to focus on this now as another major middle tone area. And notice how as we do that, this particular area now really begins to recede in the back. It's a good time to dry it. Now in ending the final portion of this particular part of our painting, I want to have a predominantly warmish burnt umber type building over here. Of course this is going to dry somewhat differently. Now let me just caution you, what I did here, I forgot to sketch this porch in. And so what happened in essence is I covered it up. No problem. I'll just paint it back in with white paint. But knowing that at this point I'm going to stop, come up underneath here, paint this in, as well as our porch. And we'll leave the gray and come back in and put the white in a moment. Likewise, we'll do the same thing down here. If we feel like we need it, which we probably will. Okay, now again, I'm coming back down to the base of this pretty much with predominant burnt umber color. Now I may do a few things differently once I get all of the paper covered completely. If any of you are thinking right now that these are certainly different colors from what you normally work with, I'm going to say you're 100% correct, but that's how we grow. It's what I love about having my own business and being able to do what I want to do. I never wanted to have to, if I wanted to be an artist, I never wanted to have to paint what other people wanted me to paint to survive. That's always been my burning ambition. And thankfully, up to this point, I've been able to stay true to what I personally am trying to do. Now, let's come on up here, and we'll bring it on down. This is going to be exciting when I really come in and start putting in the darks and the different things that I want to do. Now, since I've already used the mauve, I like to just come in and cool this brown, gray it down a little bit. Ooh, a little bit too much further over there. Using the mauve, this is all still wet. Just putting in some different colors to break up the monotony. And the mauve will tend to get lost in this shuffle. But it is something that's effective, and when it dries, it'll do its thing. So we'll just leave it like that. Before I leave it though, I can't perhaps gray it down a little bit with a little bit of ultramarine blue. Okay. Really what I maybe need to do is bring some of that over into the other area, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Good stopping point. As we go into the last portion of our demonstration here, our second to last, which will be to put in the extreme darks over here, and then we'll put the final details on this building. I might mention to you that as I was painting this in originally, there's supposed to be a ledge of a porch here and also right here, which I left when I put the building in, but I failed to leave it here. I'll take a little bit of gouache now and cover that up right now. Now, rather than using Chinese white in the watercolor, which I don't find to be something that dries that opaquely and covers as well, I prefer using the white gouache. Now, I could put a little bit of the Naples yellow in it, which is the base color that we used. However, this will have a tendency to allow a little bit of what's under it to come through and diffuse the white part of it, so I'll just leave it like it is, and I think it'll be sufficient. We'll paint that area in there. Most of this is going to be subdued quite a bit later. Okay, that'll pretty well give us what we want in that particular section. Now when it dries, if I want to wash a little color over it, we can do that. Now, the next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to begin with this building on the left And watch how I'm going to move through it pretty quickly. I'm not going to put a lot of detail in it, but primarily I'd like to just go ahead and start with this building, and then we'll go to this one and this one in progression. Now let's move this up here. Perhaps we can bring the camera down a little bit more so you can see what's going on at the top of it. Okay, now looks like we have nothing more than just the outline of a roof up here. Now I want to continue the wet on wet effect on this, primarily meaning that I don't want to put a lot of detail in it. So I'll come down like this, show this extending over here just a little bit. I will take some plain paint and just lose this line just about completely and subdue this and bring it down to a degree. Now you notice I put the strong pigment in it, then I somewhat softened it and just totally just about lost the line that was on it. Now a lot of these doors had a greenish cast to them. I'll take a little bit now of the burnt umber, and the hook is green, and I'll just indicate somewhat of a door. Now watch how, without a lot of detail or to do, I'm just going to indicate certain things and just come right on down with them. And that's all I'm going to do. Let's see if we can get that where it's a little, it's not even showing up too well. But anyhow, I think you'll see it well enough in the finished painting. Now likewise, we're going to take the ultramarine blue and burnt umber, continuing with our effect that we're trying for here, where we have the extremely dark area. Take our brush under it and soften it. Now let's do this one a little bit differently. Now we want to keep the subdued effect, but perhaps this time let's show a little bit of reflected light on that section. Now I don't know whether that's showing up very well because of the glare, but what you'll see is I left the underside of it relatively light, and then we'll just proceed with a little bit darker section right up under here. Of course, there's a variety of, there we go, we're picking that up a little bit better now. There's a variety of ways that this could be done. Now let's continue again. We'll put another door in here. And drop this down likewise. Purposely not concentrating on too much detail. Okay, now as we come down a little bit lower, we'll one more time smooth this up. Put our extreme dark in like this, but this time let's just lighten it somewhat. And then right below that area, take almost completely dark pigment, and we'll make this area just a little bit darker, coming under here, using a number 8 brush. If you were curious, it could be also, once I put my basic things in there, a 1/2-inch brush would work very nicely. Just something to break this up. Now, a lot of times on these buildings you'd have supports under them on these porches and whatever, so we might even want to come in now and put a little bit of an indication of something like this here. Come back up here and accent this a little bit more. Lose that. Now it's keeping the somewhat subdued effect that I want it to have, which is fine. Now we'll come down one more time, and just so we don't have a large blank area here, so to speak, we'll just put this in. Okay, and that will be sufficient for what we want in this particular area. Now I want to go to the next section before I do anything else, as you're going to see in a moment, because what I'd like to do is I'd like to lay in some of the other colors that I'd like to have in there before we put in the final detail. So let's just switch back up now. We'll go to the top of our building again, and just doing this somewhat recklessly. See if we can turn the painting in a way that'll make it a little easier for me to make sure that I get the perspective on this correct. Now this is crucial. We want to have, again, another extremely dark section showing somewhat of an overhang coming over that roof. I'm going to bring it out to here, again using the ultramarine blue and the burnt umber. And of course, I would think by now that all of you would know whenever we're in those really, really extreme darks, that's what we're always going to be using. Okay, we'll bring that back down, turn this where I can straighten this line out a little bit. Okay, now let's take a little bit of the burnt sienna mixture now, maybe a little bit of the rose madder, and let's put in a little bit different color. Now notice I'm going to come down with this, and it's rather dark, but I'm going to purposely bring it right along that wet area. So that I can diffuse that line just a little bit, which you'll see me do in just a moment. Alright, we'll bring it down like that. I don't want this extremely dark, but we want to bring it dark enough where it has an effect. Now, after a certain point, I may even want to come in with my 1/2 inch brush now. Okay, now up under here, let's not have that quite so specific. So while it's wet, take a little bit of the ultramarine blue and burnt umber, and we'll soften that. Now, we may have a door or two in here. It could be any particular color we wanted it to be. So let's first of all, getting a little bit too much water in this area than I wanted. Let's subdue this a little bit. Put it in here. Now even while that's wet, I'd like to just, it might run a little bit, but let's indicate a couple of the small windows or doors up here. And as I mentioned, I know this is wet, but this will continue to give it the effect that I want it to have as far as the more subdued. Okay, make sure these lines at the top, perspective-wise, are like we want them. Okay, now up under here, I might want to just antique this a little bit. Not have the walls quite so clear. Okay, now we'll allow this part to dry and go in and put in the part under it. Now, let's go to our next level on our second building here, and it will include, again, the shadow area under here. I may not make it quite as dark. Still using that number 8 brush, because I need a little bit of a fine point in this section here. Okay, just run that along here. Again, maybe as we get a little further away, I won't have it quite as dark as I had that first section. Okay, now of course whenever we do that, we always want to show a little bit of a darker section under it, however we think we want to do it. In this case, I'm going to go to my 1/2 inch brush and just subdue that a little bit more, somewhat similar to what we're doing here, and then just maybe run it down likewise. Now occasionally you'll have wrought on areas, different things that might show through, so we'll just come in and just put a little something in it to break up the monotony of it actually. Okay, now we want to show some suggestions of doors or windows here, so we'll just kind of indicate this. Let's go back to a little bit of the green mixed with that now, just for something a little bit different. Up here I'm kind of losing this, so I'll just, that's what you have to gauge things by when you're doing this wet on wet stuff like this. Okay, bring that down a little bit there. Now we'll maybe even have one more. We'll bring down here. Okay, now getting closer towards the end, we may want to even begin to make all of this a little smaller, perhaps even indicate it by just perhaps showing a little bit of something like this, and then just lightly bringing it down. Add a little water to it. We'll bring this down like this without a lot of detail. Now within that, I like to come back in occasionally, take a little bit of the ultramarine blue and burnt umber, and maybe accent some of the lawn work. So we'll bring this down like this. Now, let's go one step further. Put our dark section under here with the ultramarine blue and burnt umber again. Now we'll put this on relatively lightly, but one more time, we get some of our grayish color. And subdue this slightly and bring it down. Now in order to keep some of the effects that I'd like to keep without losing the white, I'll come back in and tone solder some of these down like this. And then perhaps even on the front of it later I will come in and subdue it. In fact, let's do a little bit of it right now. You could just take whatever color, take a little burnt sienna, dirty palette, and we'll just subdue this slightly without losing the light effect on it that we want it to have. And we'll do a little bit right here. Okay, now that's going to take care of that portion of it, except as I see it drying some more, I think I'd like to come in and do a little bit more indication of some of the darks in here also. Okay, especially as it gets down closer to us. For instance, down at the base of this, we might want to show this as the inside of a door frame, just anything that'll create a little bit more interest in it. Okay, now as we go down further towards the base of our building here, see some of this. It's intriguing how you think you'll have certain colors when you do it and it dries so much lighter. So very simple, we'll just come back in, put a little bit more of our dark under here, and likewise drag it down. Okay, now we don't have a lot of detail down here. I'd like to maybe show this as an opening for a door. So let's just come in and we'll maybe take a darker brownish color, and then we'll bring this in like this, show this as some kind of an arch. And bring this down and maybe accent that edge a little bit more, like it's actually going into that archway for the door. And just bring this down slightly also. Okay, now I don't want to, again, I'm not really trying to put a lot of detail in it. You'll see in a moment. I'm not going to go much further than what I've got on here right now. Didn't want to lose that light, so I may just go back and pull all of this back out again. Come back in here, put a little bit darker edge. Now that seems to be dry and lighter than I wanted it to, so just drag this down a little bit more here. Okay, now that'll be sufficient for this. And then we may just indicate a couple of whatevers here. And that'll be whatever we want it to be. Okay, I think we're going to be fairly close to having what we want in here now. So with that in mind, let's just come up at the top while this area is drying down here. Take our number 8 brush again, so we'll keep this very, very loosely. And I don't even know whether this is even completely dry yet. It doesn't matter. We'll get our brush charged up nicely. And we'll just come in with our railings. And the nice thing about all of this is we don't really concentrate on a lot of detail. All right, here we're just kind of mixing our color at random, not really worried a whole lot about the detail. We'll come down with the pattern that we want for this. Now, since this is going to be coming pretty close together down here, we're not going to try to show too much of the individual railings. So we'll just come down here with something maybe has a little bit of extra blue in it, or gray, or however it comes out, and indicate our porch here. Okay, now let's move it down. Now, I want to come back up at the top. Again, I might want to lose some of this. Okay, just trying to make it where none of it is more important than it needs to be. Now this is definitely standing out too much, so I will subdue that as well as this, but it still gives me the effect that I want. Subdue it just a tiny bit more. There we go. Now, moving down here, we'll come in and do the same thing again. Take our strong ultramarine blue burnt umber mixture. Let's put our railing in here. A little darker section here. And then we'll just reverse it and go a little stronger with the ultramarine blue. We'll bring this out like this. And then show the side of it. Put a little bit more up here. Just put a little bit of detail maybe on that porch, not a whole lot. Stalking out a little bit more. Likewise here. Put a little tone over that and over this. And we're going to be pretty close to finishing this portion of our painting. Again, purposely keeping it very, very simple. Just doing a few things at random here. Make this all the way out to the edge where it's not confusing. Okay, now I don't really want to put a lot of detail on this bottom area. Other than to come in, I would like to put in a little bit darker reflections perhaps under here. Using a little bit of the ultramarine blue, the burnt umber, and maybe a little sienna. That where we can see it. Mostly to just pick up a little bit of what we had on this side, not too strongly. And we'll just kind of bring this on down like this. And inside of our sections where we might have this, we'll make it just a tiny bit darker. And even up against here if we feel like we need it. Okay, I think for now, anyhow, we'll just leave this particular area. I want to let it dry. But before we do, maybe we can just put a couple of things in it to give it a little bit more detail. And then I want to move it back to that back building. Now again, I'm trying to purposely not overdo this section with detail. So we'll go to our ultramarine blue and burnt umber. Make sure we get it nice and black. And let's just put us a couple of lanterns, suggestions of some lanterns here. Maybe the same thing over here. Strengthen that dark up underneath here just a little bit more. And you just kind of randomly decide what you want to do and why you want to do it and when you want to do it on this kind of thing. There's no real rhyme or reason for any of it. Might just want to show a little bit more dark for that ridge right here. Okay. Now we lost this lantern, so let's just reduce it to whatever. We'll let this dry a little bit now. We can kind of do our thing on the opposite side with the lantern we want to show in here where it'll stay. Okay, I'm about where I want to be with this without doing a lot more to it. So we'll just stop now and we'll go to our next section, which will be the building back here. Now of course I could put a lot more details in here. One thing I think I might just do real quickly that'll break it up a little bit is we'll come in here with a sign, and let's just put something like this. We'll have something hanging down and maybe take some burnt sienna. Just put it in there to indicate whatever. Okay, good stopping point. Let's switch to the back now. We may have a few more finishing touches to do on this, but for now, let's go to the finale, which will be starting off with our roof section. I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue and burnt umber and use most of the ultramarine blue. Just enough of the burnt umber to gray it down. Now we're just going to try to get a half-tone effect in here. Not anything too dark. And we'll just fill this section in here. Bring it across like this. Let's go out here and we'll do this area here. Bring it all the way down. Fill it in. And lastly, we'll come in here. And we come to this edge. Let's flip it around. Leave a little bit of a white highlight on that. Setting that off, I think it'll look good. Okay, there's our roof area. Now there was some kind of a border under this roof area. I wasn't really sure what it was from the source that I was working from. So we're just going to take some color and somewhat put some of this facial board in it, as we see it right here. Maybe bring it to the end of that window and then come across with some green. Okay. That's all we'll leave on that for the time being. Remember, we don't want to put a lot of detail in here. Okay, the next and almost final thing I'd like to do, well, I think I can just come on down maybe and hit the windows. And I want these to be like they're in they're catching the light. And it's rainy, it's in the distance, it's a little bit more subdued. So I'll mix a little bit of my ultramarine blue with the green, my Hooker's green, and a little burnt umber. And we'll give a little bit cooler effect to these doors and shutters. All right, even have them as bright as we've got them. And we'll move down. And maybe hit one more here. That'll kind of disappear behind this greenery. Okay, now we'll allow that to dry for just a moment. Hope I didn't notice whether that was on the screen or not. Well, if it wasn't, it's the way it goes. All right. And we've got another little area we want to cover here. Maybe make it a little bit darker, a little bit different. Oh. This is maybe an edge coming out from the end of that building where there was a dormer or something like that. Okay. Leaving the side of it white. Okay, now let's move our camera up a little bit, begin to get the overall effect of it. See how it's falling into place. Okay. Now, lastly, while all of this is drying up here, let's come in. Even though it's a wet, stormy kind of a day, we can still come in and get us a good, strong, dark shadow area under here. I'm really wanting to just put it in. I'd have a lot of definition on it. Start defining those archways a little bit. Let's put a little extra color just for the heck of it. And then we want this just to fade. Be relatively subdued in this section. Okay, likewise we'll come around here, same thing, and around here. We might need to come back and darken that slightly. As far as with the foliage later, that'll be fine. But now while it's a little wet, let's add a little bit more color into here. Maybe I could even bring that camera in a little closer for you. And we'll just run this out almost to a complete dry brush. Now this is kind of spotty because I put too much water in it. So we'll just drag that back down just a tiny bit there. Now, I want this to maintain the strength of the darks, which will tend to lighten a little bit more on this particular paper. So we'll just come in with our ultramarine blue and burnt umber a little bit stronger. And we'll do this. Now, while this part is drying, I think we can move back up at the top now. We get our ultramarine blue burnt umber to kind of a grayish effect, and just start showing a little bit of the detail in here. We don't want to really show a whole lot, so we'll just hit that. Maybe a couple of the hinges like this. Same thing here and here. And when it comes to our, what you would have a lot of times, even though it was only a half door, you would have a railing. So we'll come in and just indicate some of that. Now my hand just, well, I'm missing that for you, excuse me. We'll come back in and pick that up in a second. My hand hit some of this and I lost it. So we'll just put that down. Now for the section you missed, I took a little bit of the ultramarine blue and burnt umber, and let's just even maybe bring this in a little closer since this is so light. There we go. And I'll try to remember to keep it on the screen. Alright, what I did was I hit this, and I hit this, a couple of little side areas like that. You can see that on the photograph. Now we come over to the railing. I don't really want to make a lot of to-do out of the railing. Again, this part I'm trying to subdue as much as possible. So we'll just do that and dry brush some of that across there almost to the point of losing it. Come across with the same thing here. Let this fade behind our tree. Now when we come to this section here, we have an open window, so what we'll do is we'll show a little bit of this, perhaps one side of our window here, and then let's just bring it down since it's a certain kind of a window that they had in there, and we'll just create this kind of effect. Alright, we'll come down below again without a lot of to do and detail. Make it a little stronger under there, and then dry brush our railings somewhat light middle tone like this across here. Okay, and final thing, we forgot to put one of the areas in over here we could have put in, so we'll just do this. One of our windows we missed. And do the same thing there. Okay. Now when we come down to the doors, we'll go to the next area here. We're going to have pretty much the same thing. We'll pick up a little bit of ultramarine blue and burnt umber. Pretty close to finishing this one now. Okay, we're going to show our center line coming down the middle, and we'll dry brush area across here, or maybe accent it across here, maybe on one side. We'll come back up here. I think we could do that here and here, and it would be very effective. And by the way, I forgot we could have little supports under here and here, and maybe do that. Okay, still trying to keep this from being too identifiable in a way. Okay, let's go across here with our railing. Here and here. Drag this across accordingly. And I think we'll just leave that like it is now. Go into our final portion at the base of it. Now for a little fresh color, let's pick up a little bit of the ultramarine blue and the don't have my rose madder out, so a little bit too much. Let's just see what the rose and the hooker's green will give us. Don't want quite that much rose madder. Okay, now towards the base of it, I just like it to be a little bit different. So we'll come on down like this. Again, I'll be keeping these relatively light for our effects. We have one door in here. Move down a little bit more to the blue or green mixture for the heck of it. Bring this down this way. And lastly, we'll put our structure across here, across the base of it. Of course, by this time I've just probably got muddy palette color. Now, for a little bit more highlight at the end of this, I think I'm going to make it like it's a late evening scene, and because of all the rain and so forth, we're going to have a little bit of, we'll have all the lights on. So let's see a little bit of cadmium yellow and orange and whatever, and really maybe focus on this section right here as the accent area of our painting. Okay, now again we're going to go a little bit wild here, but I'm determined to continue the flow of this looseness in here. So let's just take a little bit of our cadmium, which of course is going to be somewhat on the bright side. We're going to bring it across, create the effect we want. And then we're going to temper it with the burnt sienna while it's wet. And then perhaps even a little bit of the rose madder mixed with the burnt sienna. Subdue it a little bit more. While it's still wet, we'll take a little bit of our ultramarine blue and burnt umber, and right up under the top side of it we'll just drag a little bit of this shadow effect down, just something to soften it a little bit, break it up. Okay, now with that in mind, we'll just go right on to the top of it. Repeat the same thing. Go across with the cadmium. Let's take the burnt sienna. Subdue it all a little bit. And we'll take the ultramarine blue and the umber. Bring that out a little bit more like that. Okay. Likewise, let's take some of the subdued cadmium yellow. Maybe move over and hit these windows just a little. Now that's muddied, so we don't want that. And then likewise over here. Take a little plain paint, so we don't have this really too extreme. Then since we have those dark, those glowing lights shining in this area, let's just move up to the top, and we'll certainly got to have some of the brighter colors coming out of the windows up here. So we'll just bring that down like this. Like this, get a little bit of the red or the orangey colors in here. Okay, now, last but not least, while this is still wet, which I prefer to do here in this particular case, I'm going to put a little bit of line work in it. And then there were generally some structures that come around like this that you had to brace these windows, so we'll come down, get our pigment a little thicker than we're getting it right there, put the structure in there like that. Perhaps a little bit more detail here. Got our darker shadows under this area. Now coming down to the base of it, we might want to subdue a few of these areas in here a little bit more. I'm just taking dirty palette color now and just doing that. And this. Maybe even swing it here, add a little accent on here. And then while this is still wet, let's take a little bit of the ultramarine blue and burn umber. And we'll do this. Come into this door, maybe show a few of the hinges, likewise here, whatever. And I think we're going to be pretty close now to putting all the detail we want to put in here, maybe just a little bit more up here at the top. Put a little bit more on our section up here. Okay, now the final thing I want to do is to complete our tree up in this upper section here. Maybe we can just lift the camera up and see what it's beginning to look like as we put the final touches on it. Okay, let's charge that number 8 brush up now. I hope my tape's not running out. Now I purposely had a couple of more limbs up here, which we're going to bring down. Let's get a little bit more brown in them and bring across like this. Primarily to just cut across the building. And not make it quite so abrupt the way it ends, and not, of course, mainly not wanting to separate one from the other. Now, in other words, I wanted to separate the branches and building and whatever now. And what I'm really trying to do is give somewhat of a counter movement effect. We'll have a few small branches here. Now I'm going to come out and do something in a moment here that I think will help it out even a little bit more. And that is, I'm going to take a little bit, since this is a fall scene, we could have a little bit of our foliage still on these trees. So we're going to come up, and if the foliage is still on them, of course we'll have a little burnt sienna. So let's take some of that mixture. Well, we can just dry brush a section like this. Maybe a little bit up the top up here. Even a little bit of the umber in there to darken it slightly. so we don't have it too totally monotonous, I'll come down like there's a small cluster right here. And we're filling in the top of that, and if you ever see some of these old trees, that's exactly what they'll do. Now also scattered in here, we might want to pick up a few little sections where we're going to have a little bit of textured, you're probably not seeing this too well on the screen, but there's a few little clusters left of the leaves that haven't left yet. And again, just enough to fill it up. Now right here, I think I'd like to separate this a little bit more from the building. A little bit more of this down here. Okay. That's going to be fairly close to concluding that part of it. Now the final thing I want to do is come in and let's put in our light and some more of the reflections coming down here, and I think we'll call this one completed. Now before I finish this last part of my light, I did move the light up from here. It ended right at this section. I moved it up a little higher. I'm going to take some of the grayer color off of my palette, and I've decided I'm just going to connect this area. Let's get a little bit more blue in that. Across here, like maybe it was a light border, just so we can differentiate between where sometimes you would have that. You see, that just gives us a little bit more depth of field. Last of all, we'll take our number 4 brush, get a good mixture of our ultramarine blue and burnt umber where we can get it really solid black. And we'll start putting in the last thing, which will be our lamp. I purposely don't want a lot of detail on this. A lot of it I really want basically suggested. Now we'll come around here like this, and then they generally would have a little section coming down, something across here. You might have a little simple thing coming across the base of it. Okay. Now these things could come in a variety of shapes, but mostly they would just taper to a degree. Now I actually made this one a little taller just for the sake of creating a little bit more interest. Notice I have it slightly to the left of center. That was done purposely. Now I'll start making it come out a little bit here, and we'll come down maybe to like a base. Create a little line like this across it. Swing it back out a little bit here, and then just for the heck of it, we'll put it in like this. And we'll bring it down to about here, drop it around. I happen to know that these things have a section, kind of a diagonal thing like this. However, for our purposes, we just want to show very little of that. What will indicate a slight amount of it. Pick up a couple of our last areas here and here, and bring it down and complete it. So about here, drop it around. I happen to know that these things have a section, kind of a diagonal thing like this. However, for our purposes, we just want to show very little of that. What will indicate a slight amount of it. Pick up a couple of our last areas here and here, and bring it down and complete it. Of course, a slight amount of reflection under this will be very good, because these are the last couple of things that we want to do here. And then finale, get a little bit of grayish color here, maybe just something to indicate this, and the door here, and this. I'm tempted to want to go in and put a little bit of that color in here, but I think I'll leave it. Here we'll get a final view of our finished painting with a mat around it. Good luck, and I hope you'll have as much fun with it as I did. I'm about to end this tape, so we'll leave on that note.